Bryon Friedman is going to join us, a top 10 World Cup downhiller. So the athlete part was Sirius XM's coffee house emerging singer, songwriter, and also founder of Soul Polls, is an environmentalist, does a wide variety of different things. Bryon, thank you so much for joining us.
Like the best part of my career, realistically should have been like late 20s, early 30s as a downhiller. Like I had everything I needed to win, essentially. I had the right equipment, I was strong, I was mentally prepared, I had confidence. And at that moment, it was like the ultimate just like smackdown, and like just like that, one little mistake. And that was a hard thing to swallow. Like so many things go through your mind. I mean, you've been through, unimaginable trauma as well. Like you get it. Like it's
You've done it, yeah.
I think the segue here is it opened my mind to emotion and to expressing emotion, not having to be this like hard-nosed downhiller. And, and then music came in, and there was this like ability to express feeling through song, and my experiences through that I couldn't really necessarily talk about, but I could use song and music as my outlet. And that was I was lucky to have that, I guess, and like, one door opens or one door closes, another opens. And so suddenly you're in a different room.
Hi, I'm Chris Waddell. Welcome to Living It, the podcast where we join experts in the experience of being human. Be bold. Say yes to adventure. Say yes to living it. Welcome to Chris Waddell Living It, where we talk with experts in the experience of being human, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs. Today, we actually have a guy who covers all of those categories. Bryon Friedman is going to join us, a top 10 World Cup downhiller. So the athlete part was Sirius XM's coffee house emerging singer, songwriter, and also founder of Soul Polls, is an environmentalist, does a wide variety of different things. Bryon, thank you so much for joining us.
Chris, thanks for having me, man.
This is awesome. This is super cool. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but a couple of weeks ago, I actually posted a quote that I attributed to you. You might not even remember this, but we were talking a long time ago, and you said something along the lines, so you might have to correct my quote, but you had said something along the lines of, it takes a lot of work to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did I catch it? Did I catch the quote?
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. It takes like, it's something like the amount of like decades or years to become an instant or overnight success, right? Like that's like, It's the classic, right? Suddenly, people think it's just like happens.
What at this point for you, what would it look like if you became an overnight success? Could you even imagine that?
What would it look like? I mean, how cool and surprising would that be? Like you woke up one day and like and you walked out your front door and suddenly you're like this successful person. You're like, you'd think you were a fraud,
Well, you'd think you were a fraud, but I mean, I just introduced you. I mean, so many people would look at what you've done and gone, what do you mean? You are already an overnight success, aren't you? I mean, how do you reconcile that? And how does it work with like where you want to go, or your image of what it might be, what fulfillment might look like?
Yeah, there's a funny way to like put it actually is like, yeah, I've had successes, right? Like lucky to become a US ski team member and to have some success in the World Cup. But with that success, there's always that margin that you never experienced or achieved, right? And that's the blessing and the curse of it all, in my opinion. It's like that focus and effort that you put into what you want to do and become, you're never gonna. No one makes it like the very minuscule grain of sand, human on this planet achieves everything they want to achieve. And maybe even at that point, like might you watch Michael Jordan talk about like, well, he should have won that game or should have won that series. You know what I mean? It's like, there's always something more. And I don't know. I think the overnight success thing is interesting because yeah, I've had successes, but like that was almost a lifetime ago in ski racing, right? Like that was I retired 11 years ago. Uh, like I mean, I wake up at night sometimes like, man, I really wish that I didn't have that injury. Maybe I could have won an Olympic medal or won a World Cup eventually. Like I never felt that top podium, you know? So it's a blessing and a curse.
Well, let's take a step back because you grew up as a ski racer, right? Park City, Utah. What did you know you wanted to be a ski racer when you were a little kid?
Yeah, so I moved to Utah from Atlanta in Georgia when I was 8 and just liked to ski. It was just fun. And then when I was 12, I had won my first race. Started racing at 10 and then I remember this, 12 years old, Willie's Run in Park City, cool GS, and I just nailed it. And I was young in the field, like there was plenty of older competitors and I just won the race. And I was so like whoa, I was kind of
And Willie's is
surprised, but
like full on steep too. Like Willie's catches your attention. That's
yeah, I mean it wasn't the
World Cup,
top.
World
We
Cup.
didn't start at the top, but like still good. It's a World Cup hill.
Yeah.
And I won that race and it just something ignited and inside me and it was like, "Oh, I like this feeling." And whatever that is, and I think that's the thing that you feel that, whether it's winning a race or, jumping out of a helicopter to go heli skiing or I don't know, surfing a wave, writing a song, it's that if you don't have that feeling internally, then maybe there's no longing to ski race. But that was where it started for me. That ignited the drive, I think. Yeah.
Drive this feeling of like this is cool, but it also, I mean, it sounds like winning was cool, but it also sounded like the feeling of doing it right. Like skiing is, I always say skiing is an art form in a lot of ways. It's like ballet, and when you do it well,
Yeah.
that it's just everything comes together and it's not only fast, but it's beautiful at the same time. Was it that sense of aesthetic and sort of an internal kind of aesthetic?
Yeah, I think when you hear about that was probably my first experience with the zone, as they like to call it, or when time slows down and you're just in this state of mind and state of being, and it's euphoric. It feels good. And in skiing, because you're moving fast, like sliding on, a firm surface, and like you said, dancing on the snow and trying to like make these really nice turns, and I was 12 and like I love to make turns and I was making really good turns. And I have a picture from the race too. And says it all. Like it just has like, it's just this really, I'll just have to send you, I forgot to send you pictures, but I'll send you some pictures of this. And
Okay.
it just has this like, I don't know, there's a moment in time and it was pure joy for sure.
Yeah, pure joy, pure in the moment. And is that when you said, okay, I want to dedicate myself to this? Like I want to go to the Olympics, or is it just I want more?
Yeah, I think it was just I want more of that, but it was also the same run where you get to watch all your like World Cup heroes race every year because we had the World Cup in Park City, and it was a combination of having that experience of my own, but also seeing the best of the best in front of me on the same hill that I had won a race on, and that is a pretty cool thing to experience as a 12-year-old. And my coach at the time, Patty Formicelli, like I don't know if you've ever met her, but she was like the drill master. She made sure your ankles were flexed. You stood on your outside ski and like taught you how to work and get better technically. And I believed her every word. And she coached Jeremy Nobis, who was racing that World Cup and was winning the run. I don't know if you remember this
Oh yeah.
race. Well, yeah, winning the run, and everyone's going crazy. He sticks his head through the second last gate and crashes, and like this whole ordeal. But like, I remember Patty jumping up and down on the side of the run, and how excited she was for her boy that she taught, back in the day. And there was something about Park City then, and the coaching, and anyway, so it wasn't just internal; it was extrinsic as well. Like seeing, the best of the best there, and seeing a coach who had coached the best that grew up in the same town I was growing up in. It was just kind of serendipitous, I guess. Yeah.
Serendipitous, and it minimizes that space too, right? I mean, oftentimes it's like you're watching the best in the world on television. So this was, they were
Yeah.
real, like you could actually touch them. I mean, like Nobis, you'd skied with Nobis, I'm sure, on numerous occasions. And so it's like, well, he seems like he's great, but he also seems like a person. He seems like somebody who's real because I've seen him.
Yeah,
And
I mean, exactly right. Yeah, it's so interesting what your mind how your mind can take you, put these athletes or politicians or whomever on a pedestal. But at the end of the day, they got to put their boots on and buckle them down and stand on their outside ski, just like you have to. Or they
right.
got to, like, eat healthy and exercise and get ready. Whatever it is, it's like it's the same. Same thing. But
So how old were you when you ended up making the team, making the US team?
this is my favorite story to tell, Chris. This is just perfect. Uh, the U.S. ski team. I made the U.S. ski team when I was 16 years old. They sent a letter saying congratulations for qualifying for the U.S. ski team, but we are not going to name you to the team. That was my first experience with the U.S. ski team. I have that letter.
So what does that mean, or how did you figure out what that meant?
Um, their excuse, as I recall, there was 4 or 5 of us in my age group that made the team that year. A few other guys like Jesse
You met the
Maddox.
criteria, right?
We
The
met the
criteria.
criteria
Okay.
exactly, and they were in financial dismay. Uh, at that point, I don't remember who was in charge. I think it was Paul Major was the guy in charge, and then there was just really poor management in general of what was going on. I'm 15, whatever, 16, so like I don't really understand that at that point. All I know is my dream was to make the team. I did what they asked me to do, and the first letter I see was like, "Congratulations, now, you know, sorry, like we're not naming you the team. We don't have enough money. We think you're, not ready." Whatever it was, it was it was just like, huh. So that was my first experience, and then they changed the whole system, where it was like, oh, like guys are making criteria now. We got to change this, and so they changed the system and they created this development system, which they prior to didn't really have much of one. They've been back and forth on what to do, and Aldo Radamus started this development system, and that's so I was on that in that group, and then eventually, I think when I was 19, no, I think it was 20, maybe, made the B team because they got rid of the C team. Suddenly there was no C team. So like that's really what they did. They're like, oh, all these people are making the C team. We don't have the money. Let's just get rid of the C team and create a development program. Like it's almost like they made the decision because of finances, not because of actual development. But Aldo, to his credit, built a great system. And anyway, I was a product of that system, and eventually made the B team. I think I was 20 years old, and then shortly thereafter was on the A team. Had some success in the World Cup, and yeah, so that was.
So you started, so you started at 10, you won your first race at 12, you made the ski team at 16. This is a fairly rapid progression to get to. I mean, a lot of people are banging their heads against the wall for a long time, and you don't hear of many men who make this team at 16. There's a big difference between a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Like it's a big difference. I think the difference was, though, the criteria was based on your age group world rank,
Okay.
right? And so like you're not competing against 20-year-olds for that. You're competing against other 16 and 17-year-olds or whatever the age group was. Um, and yeah, but that I'll never forget, though. That was the year I never raced downhill before. And Jackson Hole has the classic downhill, and that was my first downhill ever. And at that race, me and a couple of the 1980s, born in 1980, just for whatever reason, like really like to go fast. and oh man, I'll never forget that race. Like that was like, you talk about like, the winning your first race or whatever, but then your first downhill race, feeling that adrenaline, going that speed, catching that much air, coming through the finish, and just like feeling the blood coursing through your veins, and that euphoric, aftermath is was incredible. And then we got results. So like we did like all these like young guys kind of like had good races, and that's how we made the team. It's
And
from
so
down.
were there other US ski team members that were in that race at Jackson Hole?
Yeah, there were a couple. I can't remember who. I think there definitely were a handful, and we gave them a run for their money. As like starting in the snow seed, like starting, or like starting in the weeds, like in the hundreds, like
Triple digits on your bib. Throwing
never
them.
been in a downhill before, just going for it. It was super fun. Yeah,
And then
it
you get to the
was.
finish and you're like, hey guys, this seems like this is fun. Like to the
Yeah,
guys who've been around for a long
like
time.
I like this. I like, this is cool. Yeah, so it was pretty. It was a unique. It was. I also recall it was like -30
Ooh.
that week. Like they wouldn't run the lifts until it was warmer than -30. It was cold, but it just was. It was great. It was fun. Yeah, I'll never
And
forget that.
did you become a downhiller that day? Like, because in a lot of ways, like looking at you, it doesn't say to me downhiller. Like you don't. I mean, you are like
Yeah,
stocky kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. I used to. I mean, I'm what 170, 175 pounds maybe. But back then, or when I was at my peak, I was 205 pounds. So I had a little bit more weight on me. But yeah, I think it was my first taste of adrenaline like that. And my brain was able to process things at high speeds. Not everyone has that. Like it's a different feeling, and it's a different line and tactic, right? It's not as technical, it's more tactical in a lot of ways. And I just liked it, and that I would say that for sure was the beginning of it. But you don't race mini downhills as a kid. You're it's technical. You're racing slalom and GS, and I made the team in tech. Like I actually made the national. Like after they got rid of the C team and it was a development, my jump from the development team to the B team was in GS and slalom, not in downhill.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, my first Europa Cup, it was a similar experience actually to this Jackson Hole race, starting in the hundreds in Shem and St. Moritz, like, and got like, I don't know, 11th or something like that in my first Europa Cup downhill. Like, it was just like, whoa, cool. Like, I like that feeling, like right on. Um, yeah, anyway, downhill was always, seemed like I just had the ability, just more ability in downhill than say any other event. Yeah.
Which is interesting, and especially in a Europa Cup. I mean, maybe a lot of people out there don't necessarily know, but Europa Cups are notoriously like difficult, nasty conditions, and especially if you're starting at the back of the pack, that they've already decided the race well before you go. They're like, yeah, we don't need to worry about any of these guys. Nobody's going to shovel. Nobody's going to smooth anything out, get any holes out of the way. But then you come from the back of the pack, go 11th. What's the thought process? Like you go from Jackson Hole, which is a legitimate downhill, but then you go to like the Europa Cup, and then you eventually get to some of the World Cups. What's it like to go through the starting gate of a World Cup down? Because you've been through the starting gates. I mean, you've been through the starting gates of Mengen and Kitzbühel and Val Gardenia. I mean, these kinds of Beaver Creek. Like what is that like? How do you marshal all your courage to say this is going to be fun?
I think when you're younger, it's definitely like this is going to be fun. Like you're just so stoked to be there. My first year World Cup downhill must have been, I guess it was Lake Louise,
Right.
probably, which is like a pretty mellow track compared to, most tracks. And then, you kind of have to ease your way into it because there's no like preparing for what it feels like to step into the starting gate of like two races in particular, Bormio and Kitzbühel for me were like, you're stepping into that gate and you're like, okay, this is this could be really good or this could go really bad. It's like that type of feeling. And I don't know. And this mental trick you have to play on yourself a little bit of just overcoming the fear, focusing on the technical, tactical, progressions that you've visualized over and over and over, like where you want to enter specific turns and direction of the off the jumps. If you can keep your mind occupied with that, then the fear kind of goes away. And but there's that moment of no return. You know it, dude. When you hear that beep, you're like, oh man, here we go. Hear that beep and like just breathe and then go and let it go and let it happen. And I think that's the difference between like the NORAM to the Europa Cup to the World Cup is just, like exponential. Honestly, it's a whole different ball game. And yeah, it takes time.
In particular about Bormio and Kitzbühel, what is that pucker factor? What makes them different?
I think Kitzbühel is notorious, right? It's just you're coming out of the starting gate. The pitch it's so steep. You've got basically
When they paraglide out of the start during the summertime, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's so steep, and you've never seen a start that steep before. Like right out of the gate. Usually it's like flat. You get your stuff. You get your get it together, get in your tuck, feel the edges. Here it's like you're like, do I want to get in my tuck? Like, I probably should, otherwise my coaches are going to give me shit, but I don't want to, so like you kind of like reluctantly get in your tuck out of the start. And, that first 30 seconds, that top section of Kitzbühel is the most intense 30 seconds of ski racing, hands down. And then the middle section's pretty mellow, and the bottoms, again, like the intensity ramps up exponentially. And then Bormio's different. Bormio's actually, pretty flat up top, like with the exception of like with the first little turn, you catch a little air. It's steep, but it's pretty flat up top, but you are flying. And you come out of this gun barrel into like just big sweeping turns that are bumpy the whole way. And it's 2 minutes of your muscles having to expand, contract, expand, contract, expand, contract, like absorb, absorb, absorb. And it's like, the Italians are like, they do just enough to get a surface ready, right? Like the Italians are, let's be honest, like they're not the most like hardworking culture out there. We love them, but they're going to do just enough to prepare this. So they're out there with the hoses, just hosing it down. And like, maybe a little bit of like, no grooming. There's no grooming involved. And it's just, imagine just like, someone slipping a trail or boot packing a trail and kind of smoothing it out and just opening up the hose. And anyway, it's gnarly.
The frozen footprints in the hose. And I mean, yeah, looking at those, because I mean, I've never done either of those, and I'm fine not doing either of those, but just watching them on TV. And even like Kitzbühel a couple of years ago, they showed after the races, they opened the start to the general public. And just to see people go out, and they go and try to make like one turn or like try to slow down, and all of a sudden they're in the net like 150 feet away because it's that turn. Then you're in the air for what, like 150 feet, and then a big turn, and then the air, and then
yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, you're the Mausefale, that first jump is pretty big. Like the world drops away from you pretty quickly, and it's interesting, like even just like your vision, like everything's so bumpy and rattly, like your eyes can't adjust sometimes. You're like trying to just keep a clear focus, and Bormio is a lot like that just the whole way, whereas Kitzbühel is like really, really radical for 30 seconds, and you're like but then you have to like contemplate the last 30 seconds for a minute. You're kind of like,
and your legs are getting tired while you're in your tuck as well. I mean, you're in your tuck, which is, most people get into their tuck for 30 seconds and their legs are burning.
Yeah.
You get into your tuck for 30 seconds as a bit of a respite until it gets crazy again. And some of those jumps, I mean, people don't recognize, I think, that those jumps, the scariest ones for me are the ones where you're coming at it and all you see is the valley below. Like you don't see snow anymore. You just see the valley. And there's a part of your brain that goes, am I going all the way down there? Am I landing where there's no snow down in the Brown Valley?
Yeah, you're choosing these like cathedral landmarks as like your directional change in the air, like of like the town. It is a pretty interesting visual. It's funny you bring that up. I hadn't thought about that in a while. It's very true. Yeah, it's you see these like this perfect little European village below you, and you're off into space.
And you've got to be okay with that. I mean, some of what you said that I thought was really cool is that doing your job is the thing that gets you focused and gets you out of your head. This is what I have to do. And there's almost a security built in doing your job. This is what I'm supposed to do. If I do my job, then everything is okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's
Do
the
your job.
challenge. But you had to earn your way up. I remember you and I actually trained together at one point over at Snow Basin back in 2002. This is approaching the games here in Salt Lake. So you and Darren and Fleischer were
Yeah.
training with us one year, and you were still the young guy. So Brigham and I had grown up ski racing together back in Massachusetts. I guess he's Virgil now, but he's still kind of Brigham to me because that's who he was back in the day. And he was still calling you puppy. Do you?
Yeah, yeah. That guy called me puppy. I had this awesome nickname, Free Dog, that I'd been holding on to forever, and he wanted to call me pup because I was the young buck and hadn't really like, made my mark on the World Cup. And so Brigham was the Uncle Virgil. We called him Uncle Virgil, Verge, whatever um, great coach, great guy, and yeah, he called me pup. So like puppy, pup, what yeah, that's funny. That
But
was
then
the
you started becoming free dog. I mean, this is then you got some top 20s, and then in what, in 2003, back to back seventh places, right? In Beaver Creek and then Val Gardenia, which is another one. I mean, those are two legit downhills.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially, I would say, yeah, a lot of terrain, a lot of areas. It's not like the flat Lake Louise or something like that. It's like a legitimate trail, legitimate course, an accomplishment. I was stoked. Like that's when the confidence started rolling. You know, once you start to like know, like you're like, okay, like I know what it takes to be in the top 10. I can do better. I made some mistakes. How do I win? You know.
And at Beaver Creek, you had the green light too, right? When you finished,
I did, yeah. I think I can't remember. I ran fairly early, like
like
you know,
fifth or something, I think.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I was holding the green light for quite a while, actually. It was really fun to just be like in the hot seat, and then, eventually, whatever. I think it was Knaus or someone came down and bumped me out, and then Bodie and Darren, I think, won two. They went 1-2 that day, and it was a pretty good day. It was a
What
really
a
good day.
big deal. And then you go to Val Gardenia, because one of those, I mean, in some ways you can kind of say, okay, well, that was at Beaver Creek, which is a really tough downhill, but it's also still in the US.
Yeah.
And the game is a little bit different when you go to Europe. Just conditions are different, course control, course maintenance. I mean, Val Gardenia is in Italy as well, as you might have mentioned.
Yeah, now I'm gonna get a bunch of like hate mail from Italians. No, it's they're Val Gardena was, I would say, a lot better prepared track than most. I think they did a really good job there. The difference with that mountain or that hill is the amount of terrain they have, like the Shawslot and the camel bumps, and that's a wild ride. Like there's just so much terrain, but you can open it up. Like you can really like let your momentum go until like that Shawslot. And you have to be very like your legs have to be like pistons to just like absorb these things. And yeah, it was great. Like that was a fun trail. I loved that track. I thought I should have won that race at some point had I stayed healthy, or I don't know. I feel like that was one I was going to win, but it is what it is.
Uh, so that was right before Christmas. And then you come back. And then you get to Chamonix, where you'd been 10th the year before, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was my best result the prior year, Chamonix. That's probably like the race, like where I thought, we had the Christmas break, um, and
Did you stay in Europe for the Christmas break or did you come home?
yeah, stayed in Europe. Bormio was canceled. Too much snow. No, I can't remember. I can't remember Bormio was canceled that year or not. I think so. Anyway, um, and we had a training camp before Chamonix somewhere in Italy. And we actually had a downhill trail training with Bodie, like some of the Italians, I think. And I was on fire. Seriously, just like Bodie couldn't touch me, like in downhill training. Like I was just confident. I had good equipment. I was standing on the ski well. I was aerodynamic. I looking for speed in every nook and cranny I could find it. And then Chamonix. Yeah.
And so what happened in Chamonix?
Yeah. So I was gonna win. Like that's what was gonna happen. Like no doubt in my mind that I'm winning this race. And so we get to Chamonix. It's like pretty warm. Like change like this warm weather comes in, and our first training run, it's like kind of like just hot. Like your boots are flexy. It's hot. Like the snow is really kind of funky. And I go out of the gate and kind of like get stuck in the soft stuff a little bit before this big right-handed carousel turn, and just lose my ski just enough to where I was like, okay, I need to redirect here because I've lost some elevation. So I stomp on it. It hooks up, and I go off this little piece of terrain going into this right hand turn, and I just like get too much air and kind of high side a little bit, right? Like, and I land, and like next thing I know, I'm just like, cartwheeling essentially, like
Which is
going
what
about 70
happens in a
miles per
downhill
hour.
crash. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your momentum's so fast, you're just like, boom, ba boom, ba boom, cartwheeling, and came to a stop, and like kind of did the whole body check, like okay, head's good, and then like I'm looking down at my leg, and it doesn't hurt yet, but I noticed that it's just basically like dangling, like still in the ski, like still like boot and ski bindings are still intact, and I like gently like grab it, and then the pain rushes in, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like this is like
Bad.
really, really, really bad. And I just start screaming for help, and like one of those like pains is crazy. Like you could just like feel like it was like the brain was trying to catch up with the body. It hadn't quite computed like how bad it was. It didn't really know. The adrenaline was pumping, and eventually that went away, and the pain set in, and it was awful. Like it was excruciating. But your body deals with it, and you just kind of like figure it out. I guess you just deal with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, they ski you down. What did you end up breaking?
Uh, it was a tib fib. Is tib fib, which is like that happens. But the problem was it probably broke early in the crash, and because the ski didn't come off, that there was a lot of the leg had no integrity at that point, and a 215 centimeter ski attached to a binding that was set to like 21.
Yeah.
Like it was twisting every which way. The bone was broken. The soft tissue was getting like beat up. I ended up getting compartment syndrome. So like by the time I got to the hospital, my lower leg was bigger than my thigh. Yeah, I'll send you a picture of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
We can check that out.
you'll see that one, and that's not good. And yeah, I was in surgery within a couple hours of the crash. They saved my leg,
And
which
that was a
was,
worry, right? That you might lose your leg.
I mean, I wasn't aware of it. I don't know, like, but yes, it was a worry. It definitely, it could have gone the other way. Yeah.
Because we had that Austrian guy who had that happen a couple of years ago, right? Who ended up skiing in the Paralympics, actually.
It was Stefan Lonsinger.
Yeah, he did. He hasn't, he did in, I feel like in Pyeongchang, he was there. It might have been Sochi. So it's only, I think it was only like a couple of years that he was there, but yeah, he same thing, crashed in the Super G, ended
Yeah.
up, it was that bad a crash that he lost his leg and came back and skied in the Paralympics.
Yeah, man. We were the same age. We raced a lot together, like through the World Juniors and stuff like that. He's a good guy, and I remember that crash, and he was unconscious when he crashed, so
Mhm.
he couldn't protect himself from the
Yeah.
subsequent like fall. I who knows? You just never know. Like maybe I could have lost mine, maybe not, but man, like to think, you know, either way, like it was traumatic to say the least. Um, yeah, that was a dark time for me. That was tough. That
Yeah.
was tough.
What do you do from there? Because in some ways, from 10 years old, it's been building to this moment. And you said in the start, I'm ready to win. Like I'm going to win. And this is in some ways, this is like the overnight success too, right? Like this is it. I'm going to win. I'm going to be an overnight success. I'm going to be there. Where do you fall afterwards? Like, is it, do I attack the rehab? Do I, what goes through your mind? Because this is an abrupt stop.
Yeah. So I had an interesting feeling that I wouldn't like I was lying on the side of that hill, knowing how like my body eventually knew, like your spine knows how bad the injury is. Like it feels it. Like something inside you is like, you might be done, is what was going through. Like this is bad. Like you might be done. Like this could be it.
You
Like
might
no
be
more ski
done
race.
as a ski racer. You might be done as a human being.
As a ski racer.
Okay.
Not like I'm gonna die. I mean, obviously, like back in the day, yes, you would have died because you wouldn't have like medical attention to like
Right.
amputate your leg so you don't go gangrenous. But you know, um, but so actually, interesting thought. Like now that I think about that question, really interesting question. That's probably what my body was thinking. Like in but like internally, your body's like, this is a very, very serious problem that that without medical attention, you will die from. No, like you will die from that,
Yeah.
like guaranteed. Um, we have modern medical attention and a helicopter to take you to you know, a hospital that sees a lot of trauma in the Chamonix Valley. So that wasn't really a worry, but I think internally, like I never thought about it that way, Chris. Like, yeah, that was probably part of it, but in my mind, it was more selfish of like my career is over, and this could be bad enough to end my career, and I was right.
Was this
I mean,
23?
I was 24.
24. Okay.
I was 24 years old,
Which as a
and
downhiller, that's starting your career.
just getting started.
You're
Yeah,
just getting to know the tracks. I mean, so much of it is the experience of where you want to be, what you're going to expect,
yeah.
and then you can actually go for it. You were pushing the time the timeline a little bit in being competitive early on in your young 20s.
I don't. Yeah. Why wait for success? No, just. Yeah. It was early, man. Like I had my whole, like the best part of my career. You know, realistically, should have been like late 20s, early 30s as a downhiller. That's just kind of like the standard, right? So, like you said, getting to know the track, um, you know, and or the tracks and getting comfortable with speed and just understanding your body and your limits and like your mental approach to the game and I finally just felt like I was ready. I was poised for, you know, the right, like I had everything I needed to win, essentially. I had the right equipment. I was strong. I was mentally prepared. I had confidence. And at that moment, it was like the ultimate, just like smackdown and like weird, like good. No, that's not happening. Like that, just like that, one little mistake, all that work. And that was a hard thing to swallow. Like so many things go through your mind. I mean, you've been through, unimaginable trauma as well, right? You get it. Like
You've done it, yeah.
yeah, it's hard, and it's a really hard thing to like. I still have a hard time with it, man. Like I don't like, I have issues with it sometimes. I'm like, why did that happen? Like that shouldn't have happened, like why that happened to me? But like at the end of the day, it's more of like, where do you go with it? Like where do you take that energy? And I get emotional about it because I was lost for a while, like lost. And you're one person for who you think you are for your whole life, and then it's gone. And you're like, whoa, who am I now? Like I literally was a different person. Like it changed me. Like I had not a care in the world, happy as can be, like, and like I'm not that same happy-go-lucky kid anymore, you know? Uh, but I think the segue here is it opened my mind to emotion and to expressing emotion, not having to be this like hard-nosed downhiller. And, and then music came in, and there was this like ability to express feeling through song and my experiences through that I couldn't really necessarily talk about, but I could use song and music as my outlet. And that was pretty, I was lucky to have that, I guess, and like, one door opens or one door closes, another opens. And so suddenly you're in a different room. Yeah.
Can you be both people at the same time? Like the hard-nosed downhiller and the open to emotion musician. And we've got to catch up a little bit on the musician part, right? Because you obviously you started playing as a freshman, right? A freshman in college. I mean, this sounds like, I mean, there's a fair amount of serendipity in your story, right?
Yeah, I
Or you
mean,
were open to serendipity.
yeah, I think that, well, the music thing for me was really just a pastime, like I picked up the guitar. I love music. Like I've loved music since I can remember, like I was always, I get a similar high or euphoria, if you will, from a great song as like skiing a great run. And I started playing guitar. Well, first of all, like the middle school band made me play clarinet. I wanted to play the sax, and they made me play the damn clarinet for 5 years, and they never let me play the sax because I didn't take piano lessons as a kid. So I had to play the clarinet, which is funny in a lot of ways. And then so I learned to read music and all that, and then I picked up the guitar, but I never learned to read guitar music. I just wanted to play, so I just started playing, and friends would teach me chords, like, simple chords. And then I show up at Dartmouth freshman year, and my roommate Gordy Quist, who is in the Band of Heathens, he started the Band of Heathens with Ed Jurdy. They're out of Austin, Texas, killer band, rock and roll, finely tuned rock and roll machine. They're just awesome. And anyway, I show up to college freshman year, and Gordy's my roommate, and he's got like, I show up with my Fender Strat, like total, like typical, like I got my Fender Strat, like cool. And he's got like this beautiful Gill jumbo body acoustic and this Gip. Like he has six probably guitars at school. And
In your
most,
tiny little dorm room. I'm like,
yeah,
where do you put all
yeah.
these guitars in your dorm room?
He has so many guitars, and most of them are acoustic. And I just like, oh my God, like this is cool. And he's introduced me to all these Texas singer-songwriter, because he's from Texas. He's from Spring, Texas, and just outside of Houston. And he'd introduced me like Robert Earl Keen, Pat Green, kind of some of these like Texas songwriters. And I was never into that stuff. And suddenly I'm like, I'm liking this songwriting thing. I want to play acoustic guitar, and that makes sense. I can travel with it on the road as a skier. And it was a fun. It was a fun, like, I mean, I would use it to like write, parody songs for like my fraternity brothers, like making fun of guys and things like that. It was like, it was a joke.
It's
It
useful
wasn't
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
the good stuff. Uh, and yeah, that was it, man. And like traveling the world as a ski racer, you have a lot of downtime, right? You're not skiing, most of the time. So you can choose like really bad European television that you don't understand, or video games, which I didn't really care about. And so instead I just like played music and like started writing, and not really writing much actually until the injury. And then like the injury is where it's like, okay, so I've been practicing, I've been playing, I have a joy for it, it's a great pastime, and then suddenly it's like this major traumatic event happens and you don't have an outlet. Skiing's no longer your outlet or your thing, so like music's your outlet, and that's where it went. Like it was just,
And
I
were
could,
you pretty good at this point, or?
I mean, that was a hack on the guitar from like looking back, like, I was okay. Like I had a rhythm, I had good rhythm, decent chord progressions, but not like, not by no means an expert on the guitar, and still not. I don't have my 10,000 hours in yet, but you know,
Malcolm Gladwell still cursing you.
yeah, I just enough to like be able to write songs, like simple songs, and that became my joy. Like that was it. Like that was my thing. I was coping, with the injury, and my, for sure depressed, for sure in a lot of pain, not sleeping, um, on pain meds, multiple. I mean, I ended up having like 12 surgeries on this leg, and just a terrible recovery. And so like music was great. Yeah, music was a great way to like, you're waking up at 2 a.m. Like, what are you gonna do with your time? You're gonna sit there and like try to like dwell on things, or you're gonna like write about it. So I would just keep a pad by my, on my nightstand, and I'd wake up at odd hours and finish a song or start a new one, or you know, until I could fall asleep again. And that was kind of like the start of it. And then Trevor, who was in a band in college with my roommate Gordy, good friend of mine, Trevor Nealon, moved to Park City. Amazing piano player. He's now in the band of Heathens as well. He was like, Free Dog, like you've been writing a lot of stuff. Like, let's go into the studio. Let's put a band together and do this. And it was really him that pushed me to do it. And I wasn't paying him to like play with me or my friends. They just wanted to like, I think they wanted to like help me out. I think they probably, in hindsight, they probably felt sorry for me. They're like, let's get Free Dog some studio time. Um, and that was it. Like we started recording. We recorded one song in my friend's garage. Damien actually had a really cool. My friend Damien Rumetz, brilliant guy, another Dartmouth guy. He had a home recording studio set up, and we made one record. We made one song, and that was the start of it. I was like, oh, I like that. That's cool. Like this feels good. And it was like kind of like it was the substitute of that rush of coming down, through the finish line off of a downhill. It was enough of a substitute for me to be like, oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to do more of that. And I think surfing, kind of like a weird segue here, but I had moved to Santa Barbara to rehab my leg because I just couldn't be in the mountains anymore, and I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to be a broken record and talk to people about how awful I was feeling every day. I think you probably understand that
Yep.
broken record feeling as well. And so I moved to Santa Barbara and found a great trainer down there, and picked up surfing simultaneously. And that was cool because being in cold water with a tight neoprene suit on a really angry, swollen, inflamed leg was the best thing for me. And there's something about water and the ocean in general, as we know, it's for sure a healing mechanism. And I would just surf, and I would have to crawl to my car sometimes from the beach because my leg was in so much pain. But surfing, no problem, like no issues. Yeah.
That's interesting. So we get the hard-nosed downhiller who essentially gets cracked open. The emotions come out of it. We've got the rehabilitation part of music, really the therapy of music, where you're playing and you have these friends, you're surrounded by friends who are musicians. What does it manifest itself in? I mean, you did that one recording. Where did it go from there?
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to remember what other sparks there were that like kind of kept pushing things further. But the Sirius XM thing Sirius satellite radio thing was like, I mean, look, in hindsight, I'm not like sugarcoating this, but like there was a guy that worked for Sirius XM. He was the president of entertainment and sports who really liked the ski team, loved skiing. They did a deal with Bodie Miller, and I met him through Bodie essentially, and he invited me to come into the studio and check it out, and in New York, and I did, and like the ski team like asked me to play at like the ski team ball in New York, which I got to open for the Doobie Brothers and train like stuff like that. It was like really cool, like just because I was a skier, right? And then
You played at Beaver Creek one year too at the downhill and Super G.
yeah,
At the
yeah, played at the finish line.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there was like these weird things that kind of happened, and then the Sirius XM thing came about, and there was a competition. There were like who like top emerging singer songwriter. It was like a vote thing. You had to get votes, and basically ended up like tying for the win on this thing, and that's where I got like the number one emerging singer songwriter on Sirius XM, because I had a fan base of from ski racing and local community stuff, and it was just good to feel like some support there, right? And at that point we made had one record. We recorded it in Pleasant Grove, Utah, in some guy's house. That
And what was the title of that one?
Road Sodas.
Road Sodas. Right.
Yeah, and that one was really like that's the I look back at that, and that was like a lot of that was written, that one and Matchstick Memories were like that was like me dealing with my injury and life and like love and all of it. Like just I don't know, I'm just writing here it is. Like I'm not it's kind of autobiographical in a way. A lot of it was just that's how I knew how to write back then. That's just here you go. This is what it is. And yeah, kind of wild. Like it picked up some momentum, and it was pretty cool. It was just it was I don't know, it was crazy. It was just a different world. Although I will say like not much different from like being a ski racer, in the sense of like you're packing up like a bunch of ski gear and going from race to race. Now you're just packing up like musical gear and going from bar to bar, club to club, and that honestly didn't really like interest me much. That part of it, I was like,
Okay,
oh,
you've
man.
got to describe what you mean by gear, because I remember landing at the airport with you one time and you had all of your downhill skis. I mean, how many pairs of downhill skis did you have?
Oh man, we travel with.
I think you were waxing skis, like you had all your skis and you were like this was early season, like waxing them in and stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we probably had I don't know 15 pair of skis we travel with, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. In my mind, I have this number of 34 or something like that. It was like bags and bags of skis. I remember you just going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, mainly we lift weights in the off season so we can move our skis without hurting our backs. That's that's the true story. It has nothing to do with resisting the gravitational force or on your legs and the compression of a downhill turn. It's more of lifting ski bags from van to ski room and back. But yeah, I mean, yeah, something about it, like, and I maybe I made the wrong decision. Something about it turned me off of like, I don't know if I want to start from scratch again. Like I just, I was still, it was probably too hurt and just too beat up from the ski, my career pretty much being over. And like, I don't know if I can start from the ground up and like live this way again. I don't know. Like
With skiing or with music?
well, with music, it's like you gotta like, you gotta start off in the,
Pay your dues and
in the youth league, and you pay your dues, and I was tired at that point. I think of, what I was probably what when I started playing like a lot, I was probably 27, 26, 27, somewhere in there, and then by the time I was 30, I was like, I don't know, like maybe I'll just go work on soul pulls full time, and and yeah, and that's kind of where
you
that
gave
happened.
skiing one more go though, right? I mean, you were in Santa Barbara, you were doing the rehab. What,
Yeah, you're right.
how did that work?
Um, yeah, so I mean, I just found this awesome trainer, and again, like in the winter months, like there's no one like back in the day, even just 10 years ago, there was no one there to like help you out in the winter. They were like they were all out like with the team wherever they were traveling to, so there weren't like therapists and I mean, there was a gym, but like I needed help. Like I needed somebody to like build me back to like put me back together, build me up, figure out how to make this leg function in a ski boot and without pain and be structurally sound. And there was really no one around, and like the ski team they weren't built that way like back then. And so I found a trainer in Santa Barbara, this guy named Marcus Elliott, who has become a very prominent guy in like the pro sports world. He's done really well for himself. He's a really interesting Harvard trained physician that didn't want to do, the medical thing. He wanted to work with athletes and found a way to do it. And we met through a mutual friend, and his business, he was just getting started. He was like working out in the rehab facility where I was, getting my ice and stim and skin rolling on the skin graft that I had. I have these like gnarly skin grafts, and they'd have to like, take the skin between their fingers and roll it to loosen it up off the muscle tissue, and
This
pretty
is
awesome
just
stuff.
extreme pain every
Oh,
day.
every day. But like,
But was
I
that part
found
of
that,
it for you? Like the extreme pain is like, okay, this is what I have to do in order to get there. So this is what I'm going to do.
yeah, exactly. It was to me, I finally had a therapist that was willing to take a risk and push the limits and do the things that were necessary versus just, reading off the chart, run of the mill, I stem, see you later, see you later. Like I I went through so many therapists over the course of that, just like they're about as fun to work with as the doorknob on my front door. Like the then I found the creative one, this guy named Kevin Brown, who's no longer with us, but he was the one who like took one look at me and he's like, we need to help him. We need to figure out. And like the first thing he did was put like the best ice pack I've ever had in my entire life on my leg. They made the best ice packs. And right then and there, I knew that attention to detail was like, these guys know what they're doing. And so it stemmed from there. They did like skin rolling, they did all sorts of rehab. They determined that the rod in my leg that they put in Chamonix was too long. Every time I would bend my leg, the back of the rod would scrape the back of my patellar tendon.
Oh,
And so I couldn't get flexion. Like, and Kevin was like, we can't do any more for you unless you have this removed. And the ski team doctors didn't want to do it. Eventually, like we convinced them, and we made it happen. And Dr. Beals out of University of Utah, who's awesome, and Dr. Cooley helped out quite a bit too. But they pulled that thing out, put a different rod in, and within 2 weeks, I was a new man. I was like, oh my gosh. So like I'd gone through all this stuff, like crazy, like skin grafts and multiple surgeries, and you just name it. And like I just had this rod and that was too long. So like the bones weren't healing. There's a lot of issues, man. Like I mean, we could talk an hour just about like what went wrong in the healing process, um, but that was a big part of that, and finding Kevin to like push the envelope. And then through Kevin, I met Marcus, and Marcus Elliott was like, what do you think about working together? And it was like, well, I'm pretty beat up. I can't do much. I can't run. I can't, he's like, well, let's go for a surf and talk about your recovery. So I'll never forget. Yeah, go
where are
ahead.
you mentally at this point? Like, do you believe that you can get better?
Yeah. So at this point, I'm, I do believe that I can make a comeback. Herman Meyer did it.
Okay.
Herman Meyer made a comeback.
Is it
You know,
hard? Like when you look at your leg, you're there and you're like, okay, this is good. And you look at your leg and I mean, because even like I saw you at Whole Foods this summer and I was like, I mean, like you were wearing shorts and there it's pretty evident that there has been some trauma on your leg years post. And I mean, do you look at it and go, Am I crazy? Am I doing what I think I can do, or is this the right path?
Yeah, I think I was just stubborn. I was like, I need to know. I can't not try. I have to try. I will regret not trying. And it was that kind of energy that drove it. It was an uphill battle. It was swimming upstream. It was,
Well, it's a moment in your life too, isn't it? I mean, like this is like a signpost moment of like, okay, let's see who you are. Let's see what you have. Is
yeah,
that where you were?
yeah. That's exactly like I'm pretty. I wouldn't say like I'm just like kind of like driven and stubborn in a way. Like if I want to do something, I'm gonna do my best to do it. And
Mhm.
that was like I want a recovery and see if I can make it back. And the ski team was pretty lenient like the first couple of years. Like they were like, take your time. You know, it took me 2 years to like really return to any type of like skiing at all, like ski racing. Like it took 2 years. Uh,
You were this
and
guy
then
knocking on the door too, right? I mean, like you were the guy who is, they had Bodie, they had Darren, but you were the guy who was like young guy coming in there, this young punk who's putting some results in there.
yeah, yeah, dude, I was the next in line. Me and I would say myself and Marco Sullivan, you know, like same age, kind of, you know, Marco had some earlier successes, but yeah, I was the next in line at that point. And then so I yeah, part of it was that and like goals unachieved, not wanting to give up. What else am I gonna do with my life? You know, like I don't know, what else am I gonna do? This seems reasonable. Like let's get better. Let's see, you know, at the very least, there was no downside to like getting healthy,
Right. Yeah.
doing the best you could to get healthy, and to be able to at least go for a jog again. Like you know, and so Marcus, will never forget it. We go surfing, and this is really like our first session together, not knowing it at the time. And we were jogging on the beach out to Sands to go surf this little point near UCSB campus, and you can do a beach jog. And I was like, I can't run, Marcus. Like, we just got to walk. He was like, well, let's run 10 steps and walk 10 steps. Like, all right. So we run 10 steps and walk 10. Let me run 10. And that was him. Like, just, I was negative, man. Like, I was in a negative headspace and wasn't seeing the positive side of things like I used to. And he helped me turn that around a little bit and start believing. And that was cool. Yeah.
And so when did you get to the point where you could ski again, or where you could think, okay, I can put this leg in a boot, put this foot in a boot?
Yeah. Couple things. I did. I took a trip to Europe to see Herman Meyer's boot guy. He made a mold of my leg and developed a tongue that on the so it would fit because I had a lot of pain, like the shin where I broke my tibia.
Right.
You know, needed to be comforted in a way. So
It's
like
where
that
it's
was
going to break is the place where there's going to be pressure later on, just because that's the way it works. That's how it
yeah,
broke,
the
right? And
calcium builds up, right? Like you have like all this bone growth around that spot, and there was oh, dude, I forgot about this. Like I totally forgot about this. I had this crazy surgery with this stuff called OP1 that Stryker makes, which is like an inflammatory bone growth
Mhm.
paste.
Right.
And they we tried it. It's like and it worked. Like my bone wasn't growing really well. I did bone stimulators, I did all these things. I took bone marrow from my pelvis, like you name it. Nothing was working. And then this stuff like worked and like caused this inflammatory response, so my bone finally like really grew back better, stronger for my, you know, specifically for the tibia. Ended up becoming like a sponsor of mine for a year, you know, like it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then enter like getting back to health and getting back to skiing. So it took 2 years to start skiing again. And then, I was very tentative. I was, painful. I couldn't do, yeah, I just couldn't push it like I used to. But I was making progress and I was skiing fairly well. But I had to start over. Like I had to go back to the NORAMs. And I'm like,
On your own dime too, right?
well, at this point, not yet. I was still on the ski team. And then let's go back. Yeah. I mean, the ski team told me you have as long as you need to get healthy. You just need to show that your health, sorry, not as long as you need. You have until the end of the year to show that you can compete, stay healthy and intact, like nothing broken, nothing like injured, but you don't have to make criteria. And so I trusted that and developed my plan for that season to be healthy through the season, not necessarily to like make criteria. And in March of that season, I get a call from Phil McNichol, the head coach at the time, and he says, "Hey, I got something I got to talk to you about. You have to make criteria now." And this is March, like the season's over pretty much. And I was just like, "Excuse me, like what? Like what are you talking about? Like we had a deal like the beginning of the year." And he was getting yanked around by Alpine coordinator Jesse Hunt and Marold or whoever. Like you can point fingers, but at this point, like it was just a systematic breakdown, and I was not communicated with properly, and that was how the cards stacked against me. And I did not make criteria that year. I was very close. I was like very, very close. It wasn't like I was way off. I was like, 10 people away from making criteria kind of thing. And they're like, sorry, you didn't make the team. Like, you're going to pay your own way now. And, I never, this is a great conversation I had with Jesse. He flew me in from California to like tell me that it was over, which I appreciate. Like, I like the face to face of that. And I was like, well, where's the funding going? Like, why, like, how am I not considered in this? It's like the younger athletes need the funding. The younger athletes need the funding. The younger athletes need the funding. 2 weeks later, we're at camp in Mammoth in May or whatever, a month later. What are the development team boys tell me? Their funding just got cut. So I basically was lied to my face, flew me in to do that whole scene. And I just like, what a disappointment. Like, what a disappointing organization in general. Like, for me, like my experience was very disappointing. It's not that for everybody, and I know that they're trying to do their best, but man, what a like insult to injury. Like to tell you one thing and then like just pull the rug out from underneath you at the end of the season to tell you something different, and then basically lie to you about why they're doing it. It's just like, and at that point I was like, had a chip on my shoulder and was like, I'm going to keep doing this. And so I paid my way that next year, started racing Europa Cups again, started hitting the podium on Europa Cup. But politically was not in good standing with the team and was not getting the World Cup starts I deserved. And I just realized it was like, they don't want me here. This isn't like, this is it. Like, I think this is it. Like, I can't live like this anymore. And so I called it. I was like, they're like, you can race. They gave me like the two hardest downhills. Like, you can race Formio and you can race Kitzbühel, but they wouldn't give me any like ones that maybe I could like, ease into and like have a nice race. And so I crashed in Bormio, was fine. I walked away. And then Kitzbühel, I skied very tentatively and I walked away without saying a word. That was it. That was my last race. And
so Kitzbühel was your last race. So I always thought that Lake Louise was your last race when you so when you broke your leg again without.
no, I oh yeah, so yeah, sorry, I went too far forward. when I yeah before during that season when I was not on criteria back in Lake Louise, um, NORAM, I was feeling good, healthy, and it was my first downhill back, and coming through like a pretty bumpy turn, like felt like something like this. The tip of my ski like got caught in a rut, and like it was like a quick like wha-bam, but like that happens. Like you keep going and come through the finish, and like coming to a stop. I'm like, well, my leg kind of hurts a little bit. That's weird. I tell the trainer, I was like, I think something might have happened. Like something's not right. So I go get an X-ray, and I refractured my fibula in the middle of a turn in a downhill. Finished the race though, which is kind of cool.
You are a badass, that's for sure.
Well, I don't know. I didn't have much feeling left. I think that was the case. The nerves were so damaged that I had a lot of nerve damage from the initial breaks. So like some things you could feel 10x what you normally would, and some things you wouldn't feel anything. It was weird, like that kind of thing. So yeah, that happened, and then the next year I was needed to have like
So you came back from that. So you broke your leg in a race that you did not fall, and then came back from it again.
yeah
One more year chasing it.
yeah came back from it one more year chasing it, and then just I remember calling my dad. I was like, that last year, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna race Kitzbühel. It's gonna be my last race. Do you want to come over? And he's like, yeah, I'm coming. So he came over. He flew over, brought a friend. I mean, I probably shouldn't have raced, to be honest. Looking in hindsight, like it was super gnarly, flat light, bumpy as hell. I just survived it. Like, but you don't want to survive Kitzbühel. You want to race it. But I didn't. I made it through the finish, and I felt that last kind of rush, and um, I did go to U.S. Nationals that year, but there was so much snow that we just powder skied, and that was it. Like that was, I didn't announce it. I didn't say thank you to anyone. I didn't like, I kind of regret the way I retired, but I wasn't in any like, like emotional headspace to be like, yeah, I'm retiring. This is fun. Uh, I've always wanted to write a letter, to my coaches to thank them, and I just haven't sat down and done it yet. But um, yeah, kind of interesting. Like,
Where was the music at that point? So you were putting everything, heart and soul, into getting back to skiing. What were you doing on the music side, or how did that balance?
um, I was playing a lot. Like, it was my companion on the road because that year I was alone. Like, I would go to Europa Cups by myself, like no other Americans, no coaching. I would bum a technician off some of the European guys. I switched companies to Fisher, and like Leo would help me out, or like pre-wax skis for me the week before and send me to the Europa Cup. Like, and so I was just like, I had a car, I had my guitar and my, a few pair of downhill skis, and like a credit card. Like that, that was like my life, for a number of races. And
Just racing downhill too?
downhill and super G. Yeah. Training some GS, to like work on the technique and stuff, but um, those kind of things. And then yeah, it was just kind of like you know, a wild experience. Like I didn't wear the US ski team uniform. I just wore like what I wanted to wear. And um like it was yeah, it was just like, but I remember like my thing was like I'd always go to this wax, the tune room, the wax room, and hang out with like just to hang out with people. I was lonely. Like there was like and I'd play music in the wax rooms, and like and I'd at home of course, but like it's nice to play for people, so it's kind of fun to like hang out. So I do that a bunch, and music was obviously like there, but it wasn't a huge priority during ski season. And then after that it became more of a priority. And um yeah, along the way, I just feel like there was this, like these cool little like circumstances, and I was always writing, and I think at that point I had recorded my second record, I'd made my second record that spring after the going through the whole, you know, miscommunication, we'll call it, with the ski team about, you know, what I was expected to, what was expected of me versus the reality. And then that led to a song that actually became very popular called Spring Cleaning.
Mhm.
And that was what Sirius XM picked up and played a lot. And I remember, like, I was like, this is really cool. I was boarding, a flight, Delta flight, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my song. Like, how did it get here? I had nothing to do with that. Like, and there was just like, and it was
Like playing
written
over the
basically
speakers in the airport or the speaker in the plane.
in the plane. Yeah. Yeah. And it was just cool to like,
Did you tell anybody? You're like
no,
somebody might have said, you're
no.
like, hey, that's me.
Yeah, I think I was more like kind of embarrassed, to be honest. It was like, how did that get there? I'm so like, this is so weird. Uh, but
It's a good thing you were traveling alone. You were traveling
yeah,
with the
yeah.
rest of the team. Everybody would have
Hey,
known.
Dog was into, yeah, spring cleaning. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, I mean, had that experience never happened with the ski team, that song wouldn't have been written, you know? So like, funny how things work out. I don't know. I don't know why they work out the way they work out, but um, certainly try to make the most, like anything emotional. I feel like in general in your life, if you can use that energy for something versus just, you know, I don't know, overthinking it or becoming stagnant, and that leads to probably like more depression and things of that nature. If you can take that energy and move with it somewhere, then that's a good outlet. And I think that's just what I don't, in retrospect, I didn't have the tools to deal with the trauma, the emotional trauma, or like, I didn't see a therapist. I didn't really talk. I didn't want to talk about it, and but music was my way. Um,
Was your
yeah.
therapy
Yeah. Music was my therapy. So,
and your way of connecting with people? I mean, it's interesting because you talk about skiing and the start of a downhill can be one of the loneliest places to be. I mean, you've got the coaches around you and you have teammates and you've looked at the course and everything, but then it gets to that moment, you have the wand in front of you and it's like, once you go through this, it's all you. You're there. And coming through the trauma, it's the same kind of thing, or trying to get back onto the ski team, that lonely part and making that connection. It's interesting. I mean, it's been an interesting, super interesting conversation. And it's just how does how do these kinds of things, like you've in some ways you've lived two dreams for most people. Like you've lived the dream of being an athlete, then you've lived the dream of being a musician, both of which most people never realize, right? It's like, oh yeah, that would be super cool to do that. But you've lived both of those. How does that change the way that you look at yourself moving forward with whatever you're going to do, but also with what you want and what you need to be fulfilled?
yeah, it's an interesting question, man. Like, I don't, probably totally spoiled, and like, that's like pretty cool. How do you beat racing a World Cup downhill? Like, from it, like, how do you find that adrenaline again? Like you go to the top of a mountain in Alaska and ski some first ascent. Like, that's one way, you know, that was fun. I did that. Musically, it's so interesting. Like, it, it's a really amazing rush, and to be able to like create something that is shareable to an audience, that they feel something from it, maybe a fraction of what you felt when writing it, or the emotion that got you there, and maybe they feel that too. That's the connection for music, which is so different than skiing. It's just you. In music, it's like back and forth, and a cyclical thing, and you give something that you get something in return scenario, and that is was so new to me that I loved that, like that energy. It's so fun to experience that, and it is. I mean, if you wanted to be a musician, you never tried it and never got to experience that, then that's a bummer. But like, well, yeah, you're right. I'm fortunate to have experienced that. It's also like desensitized me to some things too. Whereas like when life is boring, if you will, when you're just sitting at home during COVID, like punching the keys, it like there's some lows there. I mean, it's nice to just be chilling, but you have to find different ways to get that. I don't know, that creative energy, but also just I think it's just really at the end of the day, what's the medical term for it? Um, the adrenaline. It's not the opiates.
The
So
cortisol.
thank you. Cortisol and uh, adrenaline. Anyway, I'm missing the term, but yeah, it's like when you get that runner's high.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, the
we're not doctors, but
now you've totally, yeah, the you can get the same thing from eating peppers too, right?
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just you're kind of chasing that response a little bit, and I miss it. I haven't performed much the last couple of years at all, and um, but it's just it'll come again. It'll
It is interesting because in some ways it's like, the skiing, the sport part is your youth, right? I mean, like it's the dream of a child kind of thing. And it is that adrenaline rush. But then like performing in front of crowds, you hear this from musicians, you hear it from comics where you're never going to get that same kind of love that you had when you're on stage, like you get that, and it's so amazing that you might not be able to find it again. But there has to be something instructive in some ways, right? In from having these kinds of experiences that you go, okay, well, yeah, that's part of it. But what was the essential? Was it the writing of the song that was, I mean, it was interesting the way that you said it, that hopefully they can experience a fraction of the love that you experienced when you were actually writing the song, and get to the essence of where it fits and how it fulfills you, which to me it's a really big question. It's like we started some of these things before we ever knew what we were doing, and then you
yeah,
get some information and then you're like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean to me as a human being?
yeah. It's a yeah. To be a human being, like no one teaches you like how to design your life, you know, or how to feel, how to express feeling or emotion completely, not just no inhibitions, just here it is. Very rarely like do people have that ability. I think like it's more of a rarity than it is a common occurrence. Whereas, you know, that's why maybe music is so appealing, because there's a moment of someone is sitting there watching you believe in yourself, and that's really it. Like you're either up there, like you believe in what you're saying, or you're just going through the motions, or you're skiing with passion, or you're just getting down the hill. Bodie skied with passion and left it all out there. A lot of us tried to do that, but like, but but music. Why in music are you like allowed to be more of a heathen, or just out of control if you want to be, or break a guitar, and you know what I mean? Like you can do all these things, but I think people I think if you sing from something that's real and really mean it, they feel that. Like there's a vibration that they feel that you deliver. And if it's that, and if you believe in yourself and feel good about what you're singing and how that resonates, then I think that's just like the ultimate, um, like place to be, and that's why music is so fun. It's so fun.
Well, it's like skiing, isn't it? I mean, it's that search for the perfect turn. It's
Yeah,
that search for the perfect moment. And when you capture it, you don't capture it all the time. But when you're there and when you're vulnerable and when you're in the moment, it can come. And that's the cool part. What's next for you right now? Give you a really hard question to end on here.
yeah. What's next for me? Well, it's coming up on lunchtime. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Fair
I'm
enough.
just kidding. No, what's next for me is uh, I need a more creative outlet. I haven't been utilizing my creative outlets at all. Like my friend Johnny Neal, who I played music with over the years, he's this unbelievably soulful character. Grew up blind since he was born blind at birth. Um, played with the Allman Brothers in the '90s. Has written so many songs. He's just an amazing human, and when we met, I hadn't been playing that much. I'd been like in a down cycle, focusing on business and not playing. And he was just like, "Ah, man, you just gotta pick up the guitar." He's this like big, like gregarious character. He's like, "Man, you haven't been picking up the guitar. You gotta pick that thing up." And he just like called me out. And that's all you have to do, Bryon. Every morning, evening, whenever, pick the damn thing up and strum. Because once you do that, you're hooked. Like, boom, you're in. But like, if it's sitting on the shelf in the closet, not doing much good. So what's next for me is I just need to pick up the guitar, keep writing, and keep recording, and keep moving on. And just sing. Yeah, I don't know.
You have something in the vault too, don't you?
I've got a whole record in the vault, man. I mean, I'm sitting on some material, a couple, I think some great songs, to be honest, but that's not for me to decide. It's for
That's for
I
the
think
general public to
for the
decide.
general public to decide. But yeah, Johnny and I wrote a song called the River Song that, he's been writing songs his whole life. He wrote songs with the Allman Brothers, with a lot of talented people over the years. And we wrote this song and he's just like, whoa, man, like, I don't know if you realize this, but this song's special. This is a lifer. Like these songs don't come around more than a couple times, once a couple times in a lifetime. So hope you know that. So we're sitting on that. uh anyway, yeah, I don't know.
That's a tremendous tease. We're
It is a
sitting on that. When's that going to be published?
I wish, I don't know, man. Like I just need to do it. Like that's the thing. I didn't think COVID was the right time to do it. I don't know. I sat on it for a while, and like the energy kind of fizzles. So I need to get that energy back, and maybe like I think maybe this could be the impetus. Maybe you're the one that I need the slap from Chris. Like,
Happy to help you.
come on, Bryon, get it together.
Pick up that guitar. I don't sound nearly as cool as your buddy, but
Hey man, pick up the guitar. Yeah, he is a wild man. Oh my God, seeing the world through his eyes is amazing. Like he's constantly singing a tune, humming a lick, humming a hook, or he's amazing. His music, life is music to him. Yeah,
yeah. Well, this
yeah,
is this is so cool. I mean, like, thank you for talking us through your journey. I feel like in so many ways, like I want to book your next appearance because we've barely even scratched the surface of
right
so
on.
many other things. I mean, I'd love to talk to you about songwriting and how all that stuff works, but I think we're going to have you back. I mean, it's just, this is such a cool experience. Thank you for, I mean, I look back and go, okay, like the cracking in half kind of thing, and like becoming emotional, like this is it. I mean, that's part of like the armor that we have to put on in order to be successful as an athlete. But it
Yeah,
also can be the thing that shrinks our world so much that we don't see other parts, and to see that transformation is really cool. And then it's a matter of how do we keep going? How do we keep growing on that? So thanks
uh,
so much for sharing. This is really cool.
you're very welcome, Chris. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and it's It's good. You're a good human. I'm learning from you as well, man. So let's do it again for sure, and let's go skiing.
No, let's definitely do that.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you for tuning in. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends, say, hey, I love this. You need to tune in. You need to like it. You need to follow it. Please do. And please tell everybody you know. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Bryon. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to Chris Waddell Living It for more stories on the adaptive community, the Paralympics, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, experts in the experience of being human. Also follow us on Spotify, Apple, Facebook, and Instagram. I look forward to seeing you next week.